Welcome to Wellness is a Way of Life, the podcast for female leaders seeking sustainable energy, clarity, and confidence. I'm Megan Swan, your guide on a journey to mastering wellness as an integrated part of your life. Let's explore personalized wellness strategies that truly resonate with who you are. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm so excited today to have this conversation with Ashima Chopra. She is an advocate for innovation and a living embodiment of resilience. Such a beautiful statement. Ashima is a first-generation lawyer, startup advisor, and angel investor, challenging the status quo. That's why we get along so well. Ashima has carved out her own path to success and believes in inspiring others to do the same. Her mission to democratize access to capital, champion early-stage founders, and cultivate spaces for the world's troublemakers and truth seekers is fundamental to her ambitions. I absolutely love that description of all the things. So welcome. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Got a workout in this morning, which was really nice. It's really like rainy, gloomy outside, but I don't necessarily mind it. So yeah, today has been a good day, meditated, so I feel centered and grounded. Yeah, I feel good. How about you? How are you doing?
I'm pretty good. I'm dealing with the mothers. I'm about to get sick. I think my children. One was sick last week. This week another one. But I did get some meditating in. I'm hoping to do a yoga practice midday, and yeah, I'm just nourishing with all sorts of lemon tea and honey. So I'm feeling good, and I'm
Yeah,
super excited for this conversation.
me too.
So I'd love to start with understanding your journey to being a lawyer. And did you always envision that that would be evolving into something else, or was that even your dream?
Mm. So no. I went to a arts high school in Toronto. Like I had to audition to get in. It was a process. I loved theater and uh, like from elementary school, middle school, I was just always a part of the drama clubs and theater clubs. And so when I auditioned to get into this high school, I got in as a theater major. And one thing that I'll even say from this point on, because I feel like it's going to come up in the conversation, out of 1,800 students in the entire school, I think I was one of 8 brown kids. So it was already very clear, even in being a part of this theater class, like way back then, that yeah, like I was the only kind of brown kid and looked different. So I got in, it was incredible. Really like 2 years of my life learning about theater, graduated as a theater major, directing, acting, absolutely loved it. And behind my parents' back, I auditioned for the National Theatre School of Canada. I got in, and
You
I'm also an
troublemaker,
immigrant. Sorry.
such a troublemaker.
Right? Like, it's funny that you mentioned that in the intro because I'm like, "Oh my god, like, I totally am." And, yeah, so I got in, and I'm an immigrant. I have brown immigrant parents, and, there are a lot of cultural, societal expectations when it comes to the way young girls are raised and the part that academics plays in the way that we choose our professional career paths.
Mhm.
So when I told them, it was, I mean, like, it was an immediate no. There was no kind of space for talking about why this is what I wanted to do. And also, there was a lot of fear around, especially at that time, like, how many actors of color do you see on stage? How many actors of color do you even see on TV? Like, you're not going to make it. This real contraction and smallness that I think was instilled in me. And I use those words
Mhm.
intentionally because now I see how they've become such a through line in my business. And so, yeah, so I didn't end up going to NTS. Instead, I ended up a week before law school applications closed. My dad's friend's son had gone to law school in the UK. They said it was great for a variety of reasons, but one of the main reasons being to go to law school in the UK, you don't have to complete an undergraduate degree. So from high school, I went to law school in the UK. Again, applied a week before the deadline. This was not really like super planned out. I got in and then I ended up packing my bags and heading to law school in the UK. Now when I look back on hindsight, I'm like, I wouldn't change it for anything. What a privileged experience to be able to not only complete my like bachelor's, my LLB, but also stay in London to complete my master's, be able to travel, the people that I've met. I mean, like the formative years of my life were incredible, also incredibly challenging. But to really come back to your question, becoming a lawyer was not a pre-planned path for me. And I think when I think about how that's also shaped me now, when I think about my career in law and how I was always doing things that were adjacent to law because of how much I knew I didn't actually want to practice as a full-time lawyer, I think it's really shown me that throughout my childhood, it was so ingrained in me that like A leads to B leads to C, and career paths are very linear. But I mean, literally from the start and from the get go, it was nonlinear. It was not pre planned. I was always doing things that were different, or like you said, that were like me being a troublemaker, that were me being rebellious. Even when it comes to the positions that I took, whether there were, like I've worked at the Supreme Court of India, I've worked in Tanzania, I've really worked around the world. I say all of that to say that being a lawyer, practicing as a lawyer, what that's looked like, how I even got into it was so far from the norm. And as much as it wasn't something at all that I've planned, like now when I look back at it, I'm like, oh my God, this makes so much sense about the way it shaped who I am as a person, the way that I want to lead, why I do what I do now, the spaces that I want to cultivate for people, to know that it's not okay, that it is okay to not have things planned out and to not lead this linear path, because there's so many things that you're going to learn along the way, and it's going to show you again the type of leader that you really want to be and that you're shaping up to be.
So many threads to draw on there.
Mm.
Have you gotten back to drama?
So yes, when I got back from Tanzania, I wanted to direct a play on my experiences, write and direct a play on my experiences. So I remember like I contacted one of my close friends who I'm still close with from high school, and her partner at that time was working in management at a theater company in Toronto. I still have dreams of writing that play, but essentially what that conversation turned into was being on the board of a theater company that centered on amplifying the Black voice, whether that's through playwrights, choreographers, directors, and a leading award-winning theater company in Canada. I've now been on the board for around 5 years. And so that's been my way of getting back into it. And also in the spirit of being like super transparent and vulnerable, I still to this day think about getting back and like what would that look like. And I think that there's like ageism involved. There's like, oh, but I've been out of it for so long and I don't have like a portfolio built up of all the, theatrical plays that I've been a part of. Like I think that there's definitely limiting beliefs around it, but I do want to, like, yes, oh my God, like even when you ask that question, it's like, yes, I would love to get back in an acting role or in a directing role. And so it is percolating in my mind as to like what that would look like. But I'm really happy that I took the step to be on the board of a theater company. And, whether it's like attending shows in Toronto or analyzing budgets or releasing our upcoming plays and like what we're going to, productions that we're going to be doing for the next quarter or for the next year. It I love every single part of it. And yeah, I definitely I want to get back into doing more directing and acting. Yeah.
I'm calling that in for you.
Yeah.
So, to you, I mean, you could decide obviously how much you want to get into this question, but embodiment of resilience is a big piece of that overcoming that little girl's broken heart that she didn't get to go to theater school.
Yes, for sure. I think um hmm, there's so many, oh my gosh, there's so many different threads, share to quote you, that I could pull on. I mean, there are threads on what does it mean to be an immigrant. There are threads on what does it mean to be raised by immigrant parents. There are threads on what does it mean to accept my cultural background and my parents' decision for what it was, knowing that that was the best decision that they made at the time, knowing what they know. And there are also threads on having that decision being made. How am I letting that stop me? I mean, even coming back to your question, how am I letting that stop me from getting back into it? What are the limiting beliefs that come around it? And also, how is that decision shaped the way that I take up space now, the way that I use my voice now, the way that I speak up now, the way that I show up now, the things that I do now? And those words of like troublemaker and like being a rebel, I always had such a negative connotation around those things, around those words, around, I think, the programming that we've received on what they mean to be
Mhm.
called something like that. And I realize now how they've really become my superpowers. And I say that because whenever I would hear those words being used about me, I would always think like, why can't I just be like everyone else? Why can't I just stay in law? Why can't I just stick to law? Why can't that security and stability that people always talk about when it comes to being a lawyer, why can't I just do that? And I would see people around me and I would see my friends around me, and it was really this like huge resistance of wanting to fit into what I see now as this box or as this mold. And I think everyone has their own path, but I knew that I didn't fit into. But as soon as someone would be like, well, like, it was almost like a what's wrong with you? And I say that not in the sense of like only receiving that externally from people, but also my own inner critic being like, what's wrong with you, Ashima? Like, why isn't this working for you? Why are you so different? Why do you have to be so different? And so I think that, small, when I say small, I mean at that time I felt so big of being told, no, you can't do this because of XYZ reasons, and how that completely shifted the trajectory of my life. There's so many moments like that throughout my life where I look back on it now, and I see how that has led to my value system. I see how that's led to the types of conversations that I have with people. And I just see how that's led to me expanding and stretching in different ways. Where I once maybe felt like contracted or small, or like I couldn't do something, or I wasn't allowed to do something, or I was wrong about choosing something. It's like, now how am I expanding and stretching into using my voice and taking up space and showing up and being okay with being different, and recognizing that's actually what makes me unique, and that's my, inner power, and reframing those negative connotations to actually be like, no, this is something that I'm stepping into, is something that is positive and expansive about me.
Mm. Yes. I mean, I absolutely love that those terms you've completely reclaimed and
Mhm.
made your own. And for me, I've always pulled on the status quo piece. Like, I've never felt that I fit in any box to the point where I'm like, no, I may as well just go live in a different country, see if it feels
Right.
better there. And no, and coming around to the fact that it's really your superpower, as you say, to lean into and be okay with how you're different, opposed to trying to fit yourself,
Mhm.
which I think so many people do for all sorts of reasons,
Mm.
some more successfully than others. And I'd love to transition a little bit more into how this is so much more true for women.
Mhm.
And maybe that's how you got into the startup space. I'd love to hear that story on how
Um,
your passion shifted there.
yeah, I mean, I think when it comes to like why I love supporting women, why I do this work with women, whether it's um, working with women leaders, whether it's working with women founders. I think because there were so many moments in my life that I felt otherized, or I didn't feel like I belonged in certain spaces, or my worth or value was questioned, or what I brought to the table was questioned, despite experience, expertise, my resume, my cover letter, all of the things. I think this idea of being questioned and having to prove who I am again, like whether it's like as like an immigrant or, being a brown lawyer or being a startup advisor or so many of these different titles or paths that I've stepped into, I think the way that it connects to why, as a woman of color, I believe so deeply in supporting and advocating for other women is because of wanting to cultivate and create those spaces of belongingness, of wanting to support others in believing within themselves that they do, coming back to kind of earlier words that I used, that they have power, that they do have a voice, that what they do have to say matters, that they can take up space, that what everyone else is doing, if it's not aligned with them, that's okay. How do you carve your own path to wealth and success? What do those words even look like or mean like for you? And so I think that this like personal professional development journey that I've been on, will continue to be on for my whole life. That's it's so directly and inherently tied to the types of spaces and ecosystems and communities that I want to build for women, because I never had that for myself. And so whether it's being a representative and representation of someone who has done things differently or looks differently in venture capital, in tech, in law, it's like, how do I use my platform to advocate for others and support others in their journey, whatever that looks like for them? And so I think that like that really is the core and the epitome of the work that I do and my why, and also like why I just so, yeah, like every time I think of, like every time I work with clients, every time I have conversations like these, every time I meet people like you, there's always some sort of like thread or spark that I'm like, "Oh yeah, like this is why I do what I do." Because I remember what it was like to, like, I mean, even you said this, like not fit into a mold, not fit into a box. And to just show that it's okay, and that it doesn't mean that you're going to be any less worthy, any less valuable, any less enough, any less deserving of the dreams and desires that you wish and that you want for yourself, and that you have someone in your corner to be able to support and advocate for what you want and for what you believe in.
So good.
Mhm.
Yeah, I resonate with that feeling of, you kind of you find your tribe, so to speak, and it feels
Mhm.
really great. I'd love to know your your perspective. What are you optimistic about? Because I feel that and I don't know how much I've stumbled on like a very small bubble, but it doesn't seem that small. It seems like the more that I look for these like-minded people, there
Mm,
are so many women supporting other women doing it, women building businesses, women like just completely acting and thinking outside the box.
mhm,
I'm not going to say it's the norm, but I've certainly surrounded myself and created this ecosystem that it feels that way.
mhm.
What's your take?
I like plus 100 on that. I think for every story, statistic that tells us the way that, the funding that's lacking for women, or the lack of women in C-suite positions, or the lack of women who, because they've been burnt out, they've taken a year off. Like, I think of so many stigmas and statistics that are very true on the scarcity and lack when it comes to funding, when it comes to resources, when it comes to women in positions of power. I've always been like a both and person, and that multiple things can be true at once.
Mhm.
That is true. And also on a daily basis, and like you said, when it comes to the types of people that I have conversations with, the communities that I choose to surround myself with, the articles and stories from women founders and funders that I choose to believe in. I mean, there is so much potential and possibility in the ecosystem and varieties of ecosystems that we're both in, that is my compass, that is my driving force, and that is what fuels me. And of course, there's a lot of rage within me when I do look at the world today, when I do look at systems today, when I do again read articles about the lack of XYZ. 100%. I think all those feelings are valid and all of that is true. And I believe in, okay, how am I using that knowledge or using that lack of resource to reframe what I do, the type of work that I do, the people that I'm talking with, the people that I'm connecting with, to champion possibility and potentiality, whether that's in mentoring more women founders, whether that's in going beyond mentorship and actually connecting them with someone who can inject capital into what they're building, whether that's referring them to an investor or a partner or a stakeholder or someone else who's going to drive their business forward or drive what they're doing forward, whether that's saying the names of people in rooms that they're not in. Like, I always have been a believer in being like, I'm inherently the type of person who is like, the sky is the limit. Like, that has been my ethos. My name in Sanskrit actually means limitless. And like
Amazing.
which like, right? Like, I'm like, oh my God, of course. Like, again, I learned that later on in life, but I was like, this makes so much sense. Like, there is so much, and I mean, you can probably even tell with my passion, there is so much possibility and potential that exists. And I think, what are the choices, both consciously and unconsciously, that I'm making? Who am I surrounding myself with? What rooms am I taking up space in to actually champion that and champion people who, for whatever reason, are not able to be in those rooms, to be in those spaces, to be able to speak to these people. And so, again, I think that there's just so much here about like, how am I using my platform to both be annoyed and angry and frustrated and infuriated at the stats that are very real and exist, and what am I doing about it? And I think sometimes what I'm doing about it, like, I think that there also needs to be grace around, sometimes I'm going outside and just like, and breathing and being like, man, this sucks, and man, this is shitty. And right now I feel helpless. I think that there's a place and space for that. And then sometimes it's like, okay, like here, this is what we're working with. So let's go. So what can I do today? So who can I talk to today? So who can I create an introduction with, or an e-intro, or refer someone to? Like, I think that there's both space for the being and the feeling and in the sensations that are so that feel so real, and also in the doing and using my platform to do more. I totally think that both of those truths are real, and that both of those coexist when the way that I want to use my platform.
Yes. I mean, I've really learned over the years how to channel the rage, uh,
Mhm.
to take action, and then also this grace and this acceptance, particularly as women, that we work in cycles. Like, you
Yeah.
cannot
Yeah.
be always on, and leaning in when you have the action energy,
Mhm.
and stepping outside and taking the deep breath. And then I think, like, these finding the communities, the
Yes.
sisterhood is so important to manage those 2 dynamics, in a way that makes it sustainable for you. So I'd
100%.
love to know more specifically about how or what mentorship looks like for you, and you're specifically working with women in the trajectory seeking funding, that whole, or is it all broader than that?
Yeah. So one pillar is definitely working with women founders who are impact driven. So even when I look at, recent people that I've worked with, they've been in circular economy, health tech, biotech, and beauty and wellness. And I work with a whole host of founders, but really that definitely is one pillar, whether that's helping them with their brand genesis or brand identity, how to commercialize their IP. Speaking of law, it's been so interesting that I've learned how to use my, I guess you could say, qualifications or credentials as a lawyer to and work it into my business, or work it into what I do in a way that suits me. So where it was 100% before, which didn't feel good, now it's more like 20%. And to further my why and to further the work that I do, it's been interesting how law has played a part into that. So yeah, fundraising, strategy, partnership development, investor relations. I really work with early stage, pre-seed to seed women founders, when it comes to building their businesses, and what that roadmap or what that blueprint can really look like for them. Another pillar of my business is really curating events. Speaking of kind of this concept of gathering and community, one pillar of the business is called the table. And really that's centered around this question of, what do you bring to the table? And how am I using the table as this place for gathering to bring women leaders who have been historically underestimated and undervalued to the table? And whether that's centered on a specific topic or a specific theme, how are we also using local small to medium businesses and enterprises, from the menu to the decor? These are very curated experiences at the dinner table. And so that's kind of another pillar of my business. A third pillar of my business, I would really say, is around, and I'm sure this is something that you also wholeheartedly believe in, holistic wellness, our personal growth, our personal expansion, our personal development. That's really actually how my business started, was in one-to-one coaching and group work with women around shame, pain, and guilt. And how do we release that through somatic movement, through movement meditation, through embodiment practices. And so that's something that I also like hold very dearly, and I love. And then I think the final facet of my business, which takes me back to the very first project that I did when I launched during COVID, was in working with organizations and uplifting and advocating for their work. So, one of the first organizations that I worked with, I met them while I was working in Tanzania, called Tatu Rafiki, which means three tailors. They were 3 deaf tailors. And during COVID, they were struggling, as many businesses were, struggling to the point of they were going to lose their business. And they reached out to me, and I was in Toronto at the time. And so literally overseas using WhatsApp, I was using Google Translate half the time because my Swahili is very basic. We launched a global campaign called the Tatu Rafiki Project. We donated and sold masks across continents globally, sold backpacks, sneakers, quilts, all made out of upcycled fabrics. And I mean, I think I invested, like, now I say invested. At that time, I didn't even have the language for it. Like $100. We turned it into 10K, 20K. They were able to, I mean, they're still in operations. They still have their business. They were able to pay their taxes. So that was the very first project that I led. And so it was, how am I using my power and privilege to help businesses, to help local organizations? We donated masks to like 8 different community organizations in Toronto. And so that I would say is the like other facet of my business, is championing communities who are doing impact driven work, championing social enterprises who are uplifting their own communities. I mean, that I remember even at that time, like that they had to hire more local tailors, local deaf people. And so that led to jobs, that led to, them uplifting their own communities. And so, yeah, so to come back to your question, there's so many different facets, but I think it's like curating experiences and really building community is the core of what I do as an entrepreneur. And those are kind of the different ways that I do that kind of work.
Ashima, limitless, limitless. I propose you weren't ready to hear the definition. You heard it at just the right time, that it felt
Mm,
expansive.
mm,
So to me, it makes perfect sense, your background in law and theater, everything that you're doing,
mm,
curating
mhm,
spaces and yeah, creating opportunities for people in a way that, I mean, is really gonna change the trajectory of their lives
mhm.
substantially. So amazing. What is the way that you want people to get in touch with you?
Yes. How do I want people to get in touch? I mean, Instagram is a great way. Instagram handle is Ashma Awakening. I also love like having conversations with people. So I'm always open to people connecting with me on LinkedIn and, telling me um what about any of this resonates, and sharing their own story. So yeah, I think the primary way is definitely Instagram, Ashma Awakening, and then connecting with me on LinkedIn if they want to have a chat or want to have a conversation.
Beautiful. We'll share all your links in the show notes. And yeah, just so honored. I appreciate this
Mm.
conversation. Hopefully, we get to connect in real life at some point in the coming year. Any parting words or bits of wisdom you want to leave us with?
Hmm. I mean, first and foremost, thank you, Megan, for inviting me to be here and for creating the space for people to share their stories and share what they're doing, why they're doing it. I think this is such a beautiful space that you've created for people to be able to do that. So thank you.
Mm,
And I think, I mean, I just like conversations like these. I mean, we started this conversation in the morning, but I feel like it just sets up my day, sets up my week. I feel like the universe source is always leaving little breadcrumbs of like you're on your path, and even when life gets down or, things feel challenging, I think it's always the small and really actually like big, like significant moments that are like, yeah, what you're doing is like making a difference, and who you're connecting with, like these are the people for you. And it feels so deeply validating. And so, yeah, I would just encourage people to find their people and to find their community and to find those like small pockets and small moments to show you that the work that you're doing really, really does matter.
I like that a lot. Thank you.
So
And yeah, we'll be in touch. So thank you so much for your time and your energy and your wisdom today. Really enjoyed the conversation. I think it's going to connect with a lot of people.
thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Wellness is a Way of Life. Are you ready to make wellness a natural part of your routine? Let's stay connected. Go to meganswanwellness.com. Until next time, live well and thrive.